Good morning, everyone. Welcome into this Tuesday Check Call Community Update. I'm Isaiah Buchanan here with the lovely Mary O'Connell. Mary, as always, it's a pleasure for having you here with us.
Thank you guys so much. It's always a blast to start my Tuesdays with you guys. It's kind of the best of both worlds. It's the sign of an impending good taco coming this evening.
And it's crazy that you mentioned that because I've got tacos on my mind for lunch a little later. So, I can combine tacos with Check Call and it's just going to be a perfect day. And people can watch Check Call a little later. But before we get to how they can watch the episode, Mary, there was this new ruling from the FMCSA which could have very big impacts on drivers moving forward. Can you kind of go into a little bit of detail about this new ruling?
Yeah, no problem. So this week on Check Call, we do our little market update, if you will, and we have the one and only David Spencer around. And, we do break down this rule a little bit more and really its impact that it could have on the transportation market. So what it is the FMCSA published a new rule. It's been like 2 or 3 years in the making. And but it's actually going into effect as of November 18th. And what happens is if you are a driver that has a prohibited status on their license, you can't renew or upgrade or do anything with your CDL. So basically, if you have failed a drug or alcohol test, which for the alcohol, it's going to be a blood alcohol content of 0.04 or higher, you are immediately removed from service and your CDL is stripped within 60 days. So it's not like you get a mark on your license like a passenger car. You straight up lose your ability to have a Class A CDL and drive a semi truck within 60 days of the accident. So that is a pretty significant thing, and that actually goes into effect for anyone that's currently in the clearinghouse with a prohibited status on their license. It's not necessarily like, from November 18th moving forward, anyone that this happens to, this is them. Like, there's no one being grandfathered in. It's just it either happens or it doesn't. But that being said, if you are someone that if there is a driver that is impacted by this, there is still that return to duty process they can complete, and that does require going through a DOT qualified substance abuse professional. You have to complete a treatment or education plan. You have to pass a return to duty test, and then over the next 12 months, that person is subject to 6 unannounced follow-up tests. And those are just kind of sporadically through the next year. And so at that point in time, you can get that status removed from your license and be a full-fledged CDL Class A license holder again.
Mary, what could some of the repercussions from this new rule be? I mean, this could impact, I'm not sure an exact number, but I would assume a lot of drivers that have probably had issues with this before. So what are some of the repercussions that we could possibly see from this rule?
So there's not really there's a bunch of conflicting information on how many drivers this is going to be impacted by. But the consensus seems to be that it's going to be over 150 to 150,000 drivers, which is a lot. I'm not going to lie. And so it's just kind of hard to know for sure how many have that prohibited status in the clearinghouse. But this most common consensus is that it's around 150,000. And so that is not ideal for a trucking market, especially heading into peak season. Although peak season is kind of expected to be not necessarily muted, but not what we expect for it, especially since we've seen a lot of retailers pull their freight forward and other stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's definitely going to take some capacity from the market. The good news is that, some of your super large carriers, your enterprise carriers, they aren't gonna ideally, or at least in theory, they aren't going to feel as many of the repercussions of this because typically they have stringent safety standards that any driver that automatically comes in with a prohibited or has an incident that causes them to get this status on their license, more often than not, they're going to be fired from a pretty safety heavy company right off the bat. It's going to really affect some of your mid-sized carriers and some of your smaller carriers, or those that, don't necessarily, I don't want to say they don't pride themselves on safety, but those who are a little more lax and are willing to overlook some things when it comes to some of that safety history for that individual driver. So it's definitely going to be an impact, and it's going to take some of that capacity out of the market. However, we do still have a slight oversupply of capacity, so it could be what we need to level the market out. But unfortunately, we really won't know the true far-reaching implications of it until the middle of November.
All right, Mary, you kind of hinted at it a little bit with capacity in the market right now. Where are we at in the freight market? It's Q4, looking ahead to Q5 or Q5 to 2025. Where are we at with the freight market right now?
So, I mean, look, Isaiah, who knows? Um, but no, we're kind of seeing as like a collective, we're kind of seeing that we're starting to see that rebound, that tail swing, that positioning for a more traditional year in 2025. So it's not rock bottom. We've already hit rock bottom. So we're just continuing to see some of those trends move upward, especially in the dry van market. The one unique kind of call out is that the reefer outbound tender rejections are abnormally high for this time of the year. And we're not really sure if that's a thing, if that's related to some of the natural disasters we have happening in the Southeast, or if it's the tail end of the northern US's produce season, or who knows, a whole bunch of reasons. But we are seeing some elevated volumes or elevated rejections there in the reefer sector or the reefer side. So that could lead to some higher spot rates for reefer carriers, which is much appreciated from those carriers, less so from the shippers. But I think rounding out the year, we're going to kind of see more of the same to put ourselves in a really nice position for 2025 to kind of get that return to normalcy, that level set that everybody has been desperately clamoring for.
Now, does that include the recovery from some of the low points that we've had here pretty recently with the port strike and then 2 hurricanes hitting down near Florida and coming up the coast?
Look, I'm not gonna lie. The beginning of October was really rough, guys. um, but we definitely did not need all of that to happen at that exact point in time. But I do think that as we kind of move into the rest of the year and early of next year, we will kind of look at the beginning of October with like a fondness in the rearview mirror. Maybe not a fondness, but definitely remembering because we are going to see some of those disruptions around Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee. We are going to see some of those disruptions continue into 2025 as some of those major interstates struggle to get rebuilt, and then possibly even to 2026 as some of those more community roads are also trying to get rebuilt as well. The biggest kind of barometer, I don't want to say barometer, but one of the things to watch is that, our pharmaceutical supply chain, we have a shortage of IV saline bags now because one of the major plants for that was unfortunately affected by Hurricane Helene. So, but they are expected to be kind of operational again by the end of the year. So it's really going to kind of be a mad dash to the end of the year to just start 2025 off on the right foot, because we're going to have so many of those businesses that were impacted up and running again at the beginning of the year. And then we're also going to have some of that because of all of the retailers that were pulling their freight forward to avoid the port strike, that really actually took away some of that, oh my gosh, I need to hurry up and get this going from the holiday season that we typically see. So it is expected to be a slightly calmer retail peak season, but overall that is going to help everyone kind of get caught up and start 2025 off on the right foot.
The freight market is just like me, Mary. Once I get to a new year, new me, what happened last year doesn't matter anymore. We're leaving it in the past and we're moving, keeping our head going or keeping our eyes focused on the windshield and not the rear view mirror, So we'll just do our best to keep moving forward as we go along into 2025, right?
Absolutely. It's just, what happened in the past is a lesson. We just got to keep pushing forward because we can't change anything about it.
That's right, Mary. And if people want to check out Check Call this afternoon, how can they do that?
Well, first you're going to grab your tacos, and then you're going to spend your lunchtime hanging out with us over there on Check Call. It comes out at 12:30 Eastern today, and then it will. Then the newsletter comes out at 2 p.m. Eastern, straight to your inbox for a little post lunch like jolt awake, so that way, that little afternoon slump doesn't come for you.
They're gonna be so hyped after watching check call, Mary, that there will be no afternoon slump, even if they are having tacos for lunch as well. Mary, thank you so much for joining us today for this community update. We will talk to you again on Friday.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.